You're standing over the toilet, water rising toward the rim, and your heart is pounding because you know exactly what happens next. The plunger isn't working, the bowl is about to overflow onto your floor, and the plumber wants $200 just to show up. Here's what nobody told you. In millions of Chinese homes, toilets almost never clog like this, and when they do, they get cleared in under 2 minutes with something that costs about $1. No chemicals, no snake, no emergency call. Just a quiet little method that got passed hand to hand through crowded apartment blocks and old courtyard homes because nobody could bottle it and sell it back to you. I learned it in a narrow kitchen in a walk-up building where the pipes were older than me, and I watched a woman clear a blocked toilet with a smile on her face while I stood there holding a useless plunger. By the end of this, you'll know the exact $1 fix that plumbers hope you never figure out, a trick tied to how these homes were built and lived in for generations. And before you think this is only for people who own their house, I promise you this works even if you rent, with nothing permanent, nothing your landlord will ever notice. So let me take you back to that kitchen, because that's where I stopped believing plumbers and started believing something older. I want to be honest with you about how skeptical I was. For years, I did what everyone does. I kept a bottle of blue chemical drain cleaner under the sink, the kind that promises to melt anything, the kind that costs $8 or $9 and burns your nose when you open it. I poured it in. I waited. Sometimes the clog moved. Most times it didn't, and I'd stand there having just poured money down a hole while the water sat there mocking me. Then I'd call someone, and the someone would charge me $150, sometimes $200, to do something that took him 4 minutes. I thought that was just the price of having a toilet. I thought clogs were bad luck. I never once thought the whole thing could be prevented or fixed for the price of a coffee until I saw it with my own eyes. The building belonged to an older couple who had lived in the same city block for over 30 years. The plumbing there was ancient. Cast iron pipes, narrow bends, the kind of setup a modern plumber would shake his head at. By every rule I knew, that toilet should have clogged constantly. It didn't. And when I finally asked why, the answer wasn't a product. It was a habit, and then a set of tricks, and every single one of them cost almost nothing. That's the first thing you have to understand before any fix will make sense to you. A clog is not a mystery. It is physics. And once you understand the physics, you stop buying luck in a bottle and you start controlling the outcome for pocket change. So let me give you the very first piece, the one that changed how I saw the whole problem. Most people think a toilet clogs because there is too much stuff in it. That's only half true. A toilet clogs because the water loses its power. Let me explain what I mean, because this is the thing nobody says out loud. When you flush, it is not really the toilet that clears the pipe. It is the volume and the speed of the water hitting the blockage all at once. A flush works because a large amount of water arrives fast enough to shove everything past the curved trap and down the line. When that fails, the water trickles instead of slams, and the blockage just sits there. So the real question is never, how do I dissolve this? The real question is, how do I get water to hit it hard enough to move it? And here is where the first cheap trick comes in. The one I saw in that kitchen. She didn't reach for a plunger first. She reached for a bucket. She filled an ordinary bucket with water, maybe 2 gallons, from the tap. Then she stood over the bowl and poured it in. Not gently, but from about waist height, in one steady, fast stream aimed straight down into the hole at the bottom of the bowl. Not the water sitting in the bowl, the drain hole itself. I watched that clog give up almost instantly. The water level dropped, there was that beautiful gulping sound, and it was clear. Here is why it works, and it costs you nothing but the water. A normal flush releases its water slowly, spread across the rim. When you pour a bucket from height directly at the trap, you deliver the same water with far more force concentrated in one spot. Gravity does the work a weak flush couldn't. The old rule I was taught was simple. Height gives you speed, speed gives you force, and force is what moves a clog. Pour from higher, and pour faster, and aim for the hole, not the water. Now, that alone will clear a huge number of everyday clogs, and it will save you the first phone call to a plumber. But I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too. What about the stubborn ones? What about the clog that laughs at a bucket of cold water? Because those exist, And for those, cold water is exactly the wrong tool. And that brings me to the mistake almost everyone makes. The one that quietly makes their clogs worse. Cold water hardens things. Think about what actually blocks a toilet. It is usually a mix of paper, organic waste, and sometimes grease or oils that travel down from other sources. Cold water makes all of that stiffer, tighter, more locked together. It is the same reason bacon grease turns solid white in a cold pan. So if your clog has any fat or soap or oily residue holding it together, and most stubborn ones do, cold water just cements the problem in place. In the homes where I learned this, nobody attacked a hard clog with cold water. They used hot. But here is the part that matters, and the part that saves your toilet from cracking. So listen closely. Not boiling water. Never boiling. I need to warn you about this because I have seen people get it wrong. Boiling water, the full rolling kind straight off the stove at 212 degrees, can crack a porcelain bowl or soften the wax seal underneath and cause a leak you really don't want. So the temperature that was used, the sweet spot, is hot but not boiling. Think of the water you'd make tea with after it has sat for a minute. Somewhere around 150 to 160 degrees. Hot enough to soften grease and relax the fibers in the paper, gentle enough that your toilet survives it fine. You heat that water and you pour it the same way, from height, fast, straight down the hole. The heat loosens the bonds in the clog while the force of the pour shoves it through. Heat plus force. That combination clears things that cold water and a plunger never could. But even hot water on its own is only step 2, because there is one more ingredient that turns this from a decent trick into something that feels almost unfair. And it is sitting next to your sink right now. Let me tell you about the dish soap, because this is where people's jaws drop. The trick is to add dish soap to the bowl before the hot water goes in. Just a good squirt, maybe a quarter cup if you want to be generous, of ordinary liquid dish soap, the cheap kind, the dollar bottle. You pour the soap into the bowl, and you let it sit for a few minutes, so it sinks down and travels toward the clog. Then you follow with the hot, not boiling, water poured from height. Here is the mechanism, and once you hear it, you'll never forget it. Dish soap is a lubricant, and it is also a surfactant, which is a fancy word for something that breaks the surface tension and coats surfaces in a slick layer. When that soap works its way around the clog, it does 2 things at once. It coats the sides of the trap and the blockage so everything gets slippery, and it starts breaking down the grease that binds the clog together. So now, when your hot water arrives with force, the clog isn't gripping the pipe anymore. It slides. I remember the first time I tried this in my own bathroom on a clog that had beaten a plunger for 20 minutes. Soap in, waited 5 minutes, kettle of hot water poured from waist height, and it went down with a sound so satisfying I actually laughed out loud alone in my bathroom. Total cost, maybe 50 cents of soap and some hot water. Compare that to the $8 chemical I used to trust, or the $200 plumber I used to call. Now, some of you are nodding, but a quieter voice in the back of your head is asking the real question. If this is so cheap and so simple, why did I never hear about it? Why did I spend years and hundreds of dollars when the answer was a bottle of dish soap and a bucket? Hold on to that question, because the answer is coming, and it explains everything about why this knowledge stayed hidden. But first I want to solve the deeper problem, because clearing a clog is good, and never clogging in the first place is better. And that's the part these homes truly mastered. Here's the thing I noticed in that building that took me the longest to understand. They weren't just good at clearing clogs. They almost never had them. And it wasn't luck, and it wasn't newer pipes, because those pipes were old. It was a set of daily habits so small you'd walk right past them. The first one is water. In a lot of Chinese households, especially older ones, there is a bucket or a basin of water kept right beside the toilet, always. Now, part of that is practical for places where water pressure comes and goes, but it does something else. It means that every flush can be backed up by a fast-poured helping of extra water when needed, so waste never sits halfway down the pipe waiting to become a clog. The pipe gets fully cleared every time, not just partly cleared. A partial flush is how clogs are born. A little extra water, poured with intention, is how they're prevented. The second habit is about what goes in. In many of these homes, far less goes down the toilet than in the average Western bathroom. Thick wads of paper, so-called flushable wipes, that are not actually flushable, cotton pads, all the things that swell and tangle and catch on the inside of a pipe, they simply don't go in. And this isn't some ancient secret, it's just discipline. But the science behind it is real. So-called flushable wipes do not break apart the way toilet paper does. Tests have shown regular toilet paper falls apart in water in seconds to minutes, while those wipes can stay intact for hours or longer, snagging on every rough spot inside your pipes and building the skeleton that every future clog hangs onto. So already, without spending a cent, you have 3 preventive moves. Keep extra water handy and back up weak flushes. Keep the swelling, tangling items out of the bowl entirely. And when something does go wrong, reach for soap and hot water before you ever reach for a chemical or a phone. But I promised you the villain, and now we're far enough in that I can tell you who it is. Because none of this is complicated. None of it is expensive. And that is exactly the problem from a certain point of view. Think about it honestly. There is no money in telling you to pour a bucket of water. Nobody can put a bottle around dish soap and hot water and sell it to you for $9 because you already own dish soap and you already have hot water. There is no patent on a habit. There is no shelf space for a technique your grandmother's neighbor knew. The entire drain cleaner industry exists because the simple fix, the one that actually works, cannot be packaged and cannot be branded. So it got quietly left out of the conversation, not with some grand conspiracy, but with something simpler and colder. It just wasn't worth anyone's marketing money to teach you. And the plumber, well, the plumber isn't evil either. If you find yourself wanting to go even deeper into this kind of thinking, the hidden mechanics behind everyday home problems and the cheap, handed-down fixes that actually solve them, I've put a lot of what I know into a book called House Fixes, and there's a companion volume called Deep Fixes for the stubborn problems that need more explanation, with House Fixed rounding out the set for anyone who wants the full picture. You'll find a link to all 3 in the description below. Now, back to the people who've been quietly kept out of this knowledge the longest, because if you rent, you may think none of this applies to you, but the next part of this was built specifically for you. But the plumber makes a living on the 4-minute jobs, the ones you could have done yourself if anyone had ever shown you how. Every time you don't know the bucket trick, that is money out of your pocket and into someone else's. Now here's where I have to stop and talk directly to some of you, because I can feel you pulling back. You rent. You're thinking this is all fine for people who own their homes, but you can't go making changes. You can't risk your deposit. You can't call attention to yourself. So this next part is for you, specifically, and I need you to stay with me, because I built it just for renters. Every single thing I have told you so far is a renter's dream, and here is why. There is nothing permanent about any of it. A bucket of water is not a modification. Dish soap and hot water leave no trace. You are not opening a wall. You are not touching the pipes. You are not installing anything your landlord could ever complain about. You are just using water and soap in a smarter order. If you rent, you have actually been paying the worst price of anyone, because when your toilet clogs, you either beg the landlord and wait days, or you call a plumber out of your own pocket for a problem you could solve tonight, in your own bathroom with a $1 bottle from the corner store. So let me give you a renter's version. You can do this very evening with zero risk. Keep a cheap plastic bucket in the bathroom, the 2-gallon kind that costs a couple dollars. Keep a bottle of the cheapest dish soap next to it. That is your entire toolkit. The moment the water rises, you don't panic and you don't call anyone. Soap in, wait 5 minutes, then a kettle of hot but not boiling water poured from height, and if it's stubborn, follow with the full bucket poured fast and straight down. You have just handled it yourself, silently, with nothing your landlord will ever know about, and nothing that comes out of your deposit. And there's one more renter move that I love, because it uses something you already throw away. An empty plastic drink bottle, the large kind, becomes a tool. You take the empty bottle, you leave the cap off, and you can use it 2 ways. Squeeze it and push the mouth toward the drain to send a focused blast of air and water at the clog, or fill it and use it to deliver that concentrated stream of water exactly where you want it, right into the trap. It costs nothing because you already had the bottle. It leaves no mark. and it turns trash into a tool that a plumber would have charged you $200 to replace. So now you have the everyday method, the prevention, and the renter's toolkit. But I have been holding something back. Because everything so far handles the normal clogs, the 90%. There is one method left, the one I promised you at the start, and it is the one that clears the clogs that beat everything else, and it costs about $1, and almost nobody outside these households knows it. This is the one I want you to remember long after you forget everything else. Let me tell you where I finally saw it, because it felt like being handed a secret. It was that same older woman, months later, facing a toilet that would not clear no matter what. The bucket hadn't done it. The soap and hot water had helped, but not finished the job. And instead of reaching for a plunger, she walked into the kitchen and came back with a roll of ordinary plastic wrap. The clingy kind you put over leftovers. The kind that costs about $1 for a roll. I thought she had lost her mind. And then she showed me something I have never forgotten. And it works on a principle so simple and so powerful that once you see it, you understand why a plunger is just a clumsy version of the same idea. Here is what she did, and here is exactly how you do it. First, make sure the outside rim of the bowl is dry, because the wrap needs to stick. Then take the plastic wrap and stretch it tightly across the entire top of the toilet bowl, all the way across the opening, and press it down around the rim so it seals completely. You want several layers, tight as a drum, no gaps, sealed all the way around the edge. You are making an airtight cover over the whole bowl. Then you flush. Now watch what happens, because this is the part that feels like magic but is pure physics. When you flush, the incoming water and the trapped air have nowhere to go. So instead of the water pushing down and back up, the pressure lifts the plastic wrap up into a dome, a big taut bubble stretching upward above the bowl. All that force from the flush is now trapped and pointing down at your clog, held there by the seal. Then you place your flat hand on top of that dome and you press down firmly, steadily, pushing that bubble back down into the bowl. When you press, you force all that trapped air and pressure straight down through the water and directly into the clog in one concentrated shove. It is the exact same principle as a plunger, a sealed pocket of air driven downward, except the seal is nearly perfect and covers the entire bowl, so almost none of the force leaks out the way it does around the rubber edge of a plunger. You press, and you feel it. That clog gets hit with a column of pressure it cannot resist, and it goes. You'll hear the drain gulp, the water will drop, and the wrap will suck flat as the pressure equalizes. Then you peel the wrap off carefully, roll it up, throw it away, and you are done. $1 of plastic wrap. No chemicals, no plumber, no special gadget. And if you don't own a plunger at all, or yours is old and cracked and useless, this outperforms it, because the seal is better than any rubber cup you can buy. Now let me tell you why this belongs to these old households and not to the store shelf. Because this is the hero's journey of the trick. This method survives in exactly the kind of homes I learned it in. The crowded apartment blocks and the old courtyard homes with narrow ancient pipes and no money to waste, precisely because they could not afford to call someone every time something went wrong. Necessity kept it alive. Where store-bought gadgets and paid plumbers were a luxury, the knowledge of how to make a perfect seal from a $1 roll got passed from neighbor to neighbor, apartment to apartment, generation to generation. It was never sold to you because there is no product in it. It is just understanding, handed down. And the moment somebody could sell you a plastic plunger for $10, the free version made from kitchen wrap quietly slipped out of the mainstream, kept alive only in the homes that never stopped needing it. And that is the whole thing right there, in your hand, for $1. Let me pull it all together, because I want you to walk away tonight ready, not just entertained. When the water rises, you don't panic, and you don't grab your phone. If it's an ordinary clog, you pour a bucket of water fast and straight down the drain hole, from height, using speed and force instead of a weak flush. If it's stubborn and greasy, you add a squirt of cheap dish soap, let it sit 5 minutes to coat and loosen the clog, then follow with hot but never boiling water poured from height, so heat softens the blockage while force drives it through. And when nothing else works, when you've got the clog that beats every plunger, you dry the rim, stretch plastic wrap tight across the whole bowl, Flush to build a dome of pressure, and press down with your hand to fire that pressure straight into the clog. 3 moves. Under $5 total for supplies you'll use for months, and every one of them works whether you own your place or rent it. To prevent it ever getting that far, you keep extra water near the toilet and back up weak flushes so the pipe clears fully every time, and you keep the wipes and cotton pads and thick wads out of the bowl because those are the skeleton every clog is built on. I think about how many hundreds of dollars I handed to plumbers and how many bottles of burning blue chemical I poured down my drains, all for something a bucket, a bottle of soap, and a roll of plastic wrap could have handled in 2 minutes. I wasn't stupid. Nobody ever showed me. And the reason nobody showed me is that there was never $1 in showing me. That is the quiet truth under all of this. The best fix for your toilet was never on a shelf, because it could not be turned into a product, so it got left in the homes that lived it, and left out of everywhere else. So here's what I really want you to feel walking away from this. You didn't just learn a plumbing trick. You took back a little piece of self-reliance that got quietly kept from you, priced out of your reach by an industry that needed you helpless at the exact moment the water started rising. You are the kind of person who refuses to keep overpaying for a problem that a single dollar and a little old knowledge can solve. That instinct that made you click this, that stubborn refusal to accept the $200 answer, that is the whole game, and now you have the tools to back it up. Now, I want to hear from you. And I want you to actually do this, because it matters to me. Tell me in the comments, which one are you going to try first? The bucket pour, the soap and hot water, or the plastic wrap dome? And if you've ever paid a plumber for a clog, you now realize you could have cleared yourself. Tell me what he charged you, because I want to know how much this knowledge would have saved you. Leave a comment right now, even 1 line, because the more people share what they were charged, the more people wake up to how simple this really was. And if you want more of these, the cheap, honest, handed-down fixes that got buried because nobody could sell them back to you, then come along with me. This isn't about supporting a channel. It's about a group of us recovering the quiet knowledge that used to live in every home before it got replaced by a shelf full of bottles. Subscribe and stay close, because the next one is about the kitchen, and I'm going to show you the almost free thing these same households keep by the stove that stops a drain from ever clogging with grease in the first place, and why the stuff you're pouring down there right now is quietly building the exact blockage you're trying to avoid. You do not want to miss it, because once you see what's coating the inside of your pipes right now, you'll never rinse a greasy pan the same way again. Now, this video showed you where the bucket method starts. But inside the old home wisdom, I pick up right where we left off, walking you through the full China bucket method, step by step. And when your own pipes act up, you can ask me directly, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime. If this helped, do subscribe and stay right here with me. I have plenty more simple fixes just like this one, waiting for you to make life around your home a little easier.